Hello, I'm Melissa Dugan. I am the Vice President of HR Consulting at CCI Consulting. And today I'm here with Jarrett Korn. Jarrett is an HR specialist at CCI Consulting who has responsibility for many different types of projects at CCI, but specifically works on a lot of compensation projects for the organization. So today, Jarrett, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I know there is a lot of changing regulations coming from the Department of Labor, specifically with regards to FLSA. And I wanted you to maybe today explain a little bit about what those recent changes are for those FLSA regulations and why it's really critical for any business, regardless of industry or size, for-profit, not-for-profit, to be aware of those changes. Can you give us some idea of what those FLSA regulations are and what's changing?
Sure. Thanks, Melissa. As you said, the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, has made a couple of massive changes at the end of 2024, heading into 2025. They will significantly impact how businesses classify employees, particularly around exemptions for overtime pay. The large overwhelming theme here is that a lot more people are going to be eligible for overtime pay when they work over 40 hours. Recently, there have been discussions about increasing the thresholds, and they actually started to do that in July of 2024. The minimum threshold for an exempt position increased from $684 per week to $844 per week. And now further on top of that, in January of 2025, that 844 number will be $1,128 a week. So that means that any employee making less than that money per week will not be eligible for an exemption from the FLSA. So anybody making less than that dollar amount is eligible for overtime for any hours worked over 40 hours per week. And furthermore, the other threshold that will change because of this is going to be those that are highly compensated. Normally, these employees were anyone making over $107,000 were automatically exempt. That number has since jumped to $133,000 in July, and will jump to $151,000 in January. So again, the big theme here is that a lot more people will be eligible for overtime pay. So from an employer standpoint, you better make sure that your exemptions are correct, and that if somebody's eligible for overtime, that you are paying the time and a half required by the DOL.
So those sounds like some pretty significant changes. What do organizations need to do to make sure they're prepared and proactive based on these changes? I know you said some of the regulations already went into effect and some come into effect January of 2025. So what are the things or the items that HR departments should be focused on to make sure that they are within the regulations?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Melissa. And in my experience with some of the projects that we've done recently, the two keys I could provide you are being proactive and then ensuring quality job descriptions. Those are going to be the two drivers for this, and they will ensure that you are on top of regulations for anything that changes in the future. But then furthermore, a good job description will be the foundation for any correct exemption status or test, if you will, run by the DOL. So those job descriptions will be the number one factor for determining whether or not an employee is going to be considered exempt or non-exempt. And further than that, record keeping is going to be top of mind, making sure everything is up to date and accurate, and that promotions are filed properly, and that employees all their hours are tracked accurately, and just making sure that your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted, and that records are being kept accurately.
So is the best next step for HR departments, is it to consider an audit to make sure that these FLSA guidelines are being met? And then, if you could give us a little bit of insight, as you are the person, at least one of the people here at CCI that gets involved with this type of project for our clients, what are the main drivers that you see for non-compliance? What kinds of trends are you seeing within the projects that you work on?
Great, absolutely. Conducting an audit is going to be a prudent move for any HR leader looking to ensure that they are correctly classified with their exempt and non-exempt employees. This audit can help identify potential risks and ensure that practices align with latest regulations. From my experience, the main drivers of noncompliance often stem from a lack of understanding around the regulations. That's going to be the biggest umbrella. And again, inadequate record keeping will be a big driver, and then misclassification of employees as a whole will be obviously the largest driver of this, and that will get the DOL knocking on your door if you've got enough of those misclassified employees. So that's going to be the number one thing that you need to take care of immediately. And then furthermore, going into some of the consequences, if an organization has it wrong, the number one thing you want to look out for is back pay. After a quick review a couple minutes ago, the 2-year back pay is the statute of limitations right now, with some that go back to 3 years. So you could be really looking at a large dollar amount if you are not careful with your classifications. And just because you think you may have cleared it in the past, it doesn't mean it's over, and it may come back to bite you in the future.
So Jarrett, you mentioned back pay certainly could get expensive. What about other kinds of financial fines, et cetera, that could be imposed on a company, if they have employees misclassified?
Yeah, great point, Melissa. And I think you nailed it on the head when you mentioned that employees being misclassified, because fines are the name of the game with the DOL. And the DOL fines are nasty because they can compound via how many employees you have that are misclassified. So it's not just a penalty for 1 or 2, it's a penalty for every single employee that's misclassified. And those compounding fines can get very large very quickly. So again, just another reminder to make sure that everything is clean and neat, and that you are looked at positively in the DOL light.
So ultimately, this could result in thousands of dollars worth of fines. Is that correct?
Thousands of dollars, absolutely. Yeah, I know it's up to $1,000 per instance in the DOL's eyes, but again, you could have hundreds, if not even thousands of instances. So that dollar amount can add up really, really quickly.
Okay, good to know. You also started to talk a little bit about your process when you're auditing or looking at different, our clients, different job descriptions, et cetera. So when you are looking at a job description to determine whether or not someone is classified properly in terms of their exempt or non-exempt status, what specifically are you looking at?
Yeah, there's going to be quite a few different things I'm looking at. A couple examples of those are going to be supervisory level. Do you have authority over another employee? Do you have supervisory responsibility? Do you have high enough level of education? For instance, a lot of high school diploma, GED type positions will not be viewed as exempt just because of the independent judgment that they are operating with. And going back to that independent judgment, that's going to be the DOL's favorite words for these exemptions, is that, are you operating with enough independent judgment in matters of significance? So again, that's mainly what I'm looking for from the job description. But then we do get into years of experience, education levels, supervisory, and then of course the amount that the individual is being paid is another driver in that as well. So really any part of a job description I'm going to be looking at just to make sure that they all line up to be an exempt or non-exempt position, as they are assumed non-exempt until proven otherwise.
Okay, great. So definitely something that companies need to be looking at if they're not already. Certainly, a good idea, at some annual or periodic time throughout the year, it's probably just good common sense to be looking at your overall compensation program, including the job descriptions and the exempt, non-exempt FLSA status for all of your employees. So thanks, Jarrett. Thanks for taking the time today. We appreciate all of your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.